The tow truck driver hooked the cable to the bow of the Wanderlust on a Tuesday morning. My daughter-in-law's husband watched, arms crossed, as the boat my late wife and I had sailed for 20 years was dragged from my driveway like a piece of scrap. He saw a rotting hull. I saw the last, irreplaceable piece of her, but neither of us saw what was sealed inside the cabin's hidden compartment. A letter she wrote before she died, and a single key. Her name was Eyesore. The boat was our sanctuary for 2 decades, a place where we planned our future and grieved the family we couldn't have. After she died 4 years ago, the Wanderlust sat in my driveway, a monument I couldn't part with. My daughter-in-law called it an eyesore. Her husband called it junk. And with one signature on a towing form, they erased the last physical trace of her. But that letter and that key posed a single, terrifying question. What else did my wife hide from me? I was a naval architect for 42 years. I designed hulls for commercial ferries, Coast Guard cutters. My entire professional life was about understanding what lies beneath the surface, the hidden structures that keep something afloat or cause it to sink. Eyesore was my balance. She taught art history at the community college. Where I saw load-bearing curves and tensile strength, she saw narrative, the story in the grain of the teak deck, the history in the patina of a bronze fitting. We bought the Wanderlust a 1972 Catalina 27 the year we turned 40. It wasn't a fancy boat, it needed work. But for us, it was a promise. We spent every weekend for 3 summers restoring her. I replaced the through-hull fittings. Eyesore sanded and varnished every inch of brightwork until it glowed. We didn't have children. The medical reasons are a private history of hope and loss that we sealed away together. That boat became our child, our shared project, our escape. We sailed her on Lake Michigan, just the 2 of us, for 20 summers. Every scratch on the cabin sole, every smudge on the chart table was a memory we owned. Eysore's diagnosis was pancreatic cancer. It was swift and brutal. From the first sharp pain to her final breath in the hospice room was just under 5 months. We had time to say everything, but no time to change the mundane facts of a life. The will we had drawn up after we married, simple and straightforward, left everything to each other and then to my nephew David if we both passed. We never revised it. Why would we? We were a unit of 2. After she was gone, the house felt like a museum, but the boat in the driveway felt alive. I'd sit in the cockpit at dusk with a glass of whiskey and feel the phantom rock of a wave, hear the echo of her laugh. It wasn't junk. It was a reliquary. My son Michael married Chloe 6 years ago. I welcomed her. She was vibrant, ambitious, a real estate agent with a seemingly endless energy. At first, her directness was refreshing, but directness over time can curdle into entitlement. She and Michael live in a new construction subdivision about 20 minutes from my older, tree-lined neighborhood. They have a mortgage that I know, because Michael confided in me during a worried moment, stretches them thin. Chloe's parents live in Florida, financially comfortable but distant. I believe she saw my house, my life, as an extension of her own portfolio. Pressure started about a year after Eyesore died. Subtle comments. This yard is so much work for one person, Robert. A 4-bedroom house for just you, that's a lot of unused equity. I dismissed it as her real estate brain never switching off. Then the focus shifted to the boat. That thing is a liability, she said one Sunday barbecue. It's an attractive nuisance. If some kid climbs on it and gets hurt, you're finished. Michael would stare at his plate, silent. I'd changed the subject. The campaign escalated. She printed out articles about city code violations for derelict vehicles. She quoted homeowners' insurance premiums rising due to unscheduled structures. She even had a landscaper friend give me a courtesy estimate for removing the Wanderlust and putting in a lovely paver patio. I refused, politely but firmly, every time. I told her the boat was not a negotiation. It was mine. Then 3 months ago, Michael came over alone. He looked shattered. He said Chloe was giving him an ultimatum. She wanted to start a family but refused to bring a baby into what she called their financial pressure cooker. She had a plan. They would sell their house, move in with me temporarily to save money, and my house would be sold to fund a proper family home for all of us. My house, the one Eyesore and I had restored room by room. "It's just logic, Dad," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "You're alone in a huge house. We need space for a family. It's the efficient solution." I felt the floor tilt. It wasn't a request. It was a hostile takeover wrapped in family packaging. I told him no, not a chance. He left angry, saying I was choosing a dead boat over a living grandchild. The silence that followed was worse than the arguing. For 8 weeks I didn't hear from them. I thought maybe somehow it had blown over. I was naive. I came home from the grocery store on that Tuesday to the sound of diesel engine. The tow truck was already in my driveway, the yellow straps hooked under the *Wanderlust *S bow. Chloe's husband, Mark, was standing there with a clipboard. He's a contractor, a big man used to getting his way. "Robert," he said, not looking up from his form. "City finally tagged it. Nuisance abatement. Chloe asked me to handle it. Sign here says you release it for scrap." My blood went cold. I never called the city. I never agreed to this. He shrugged. "Complaint was filed. Citation is right there on the windshield. I'm just doing the job. Sign the form or I call the cops for trespass and they make you sign it. Easier your way." I looked at the boat. The cradle it sat on was rotting, yes. The blue hull was faded, but it was mine. Every memory was mine. And in that moment I knew fighting him physically was useless. The system, the complaint, the citation, the truck already here, was designed to steamroll me. With a hand that trembled with a fury so pure it felt like ice, I signed. I watched as the winch tightened, heard the groan of wood and fiberglass as the Wanderlust was dragged across my lawn, leaving deep scars in the grass. It was loaded onto the flatbed and driven away. Mark tossed a copy of the form on my porch. "Have a good one," he said. I stood there for an hour, maybe more. The emptiness in the driveway was a physical wound. When I could finally move, I went not into my house but to the garage. I took down the heavy toolbox from the shelf, the one I hadn't opened since Alina died. Inside, under a layer of clean rags, was a small, tarnished brass key. It unlocked a hidden compartment in the Wanderlust *S cabin, a little void behind the chart table I'd built for her to store her ship's log, and she joked her secrets. The boat was gone, but the key was here. A desperate, foolish hope seized me. Maybe the compartment was empty. Maybe the log was still there. I had to know. I drove to the scrapyard on the edge of the county. The Wanderlust was in a line of carcasses waiting for the crusher. The yard foreman, a man named Vince with grease-stained hands, recognized the look on my face. "You got 5 minutes," he grunted. "Then she goes in." I climbed the broken ladder onto the deck for the last time. The cabin smelled of mildew and regret. My hands found the familiar seam by the chart table. The brass key fit. The small, watertight door swung open. Inside was not the logbook. It was a single, fat envelope of heavy cream paper, sealed with red wax stamped with Alina's signet ring. And lying on top of it was a small, silver safe deposit box key, tagged with a number, Box 714. My heart stopped. The wax seal was unbroken. She had placed this here and never told me. The boat's destruction was scheduled in 10 minutes. If Mark had towed it 1 day earlier, if I had come home 1 hour later, this envelope would have been pulverized into oblivion, a secret lost forever. I shoved it inside my coat and climbed down. As I drove away, I heard the metallic shriek of the crusher starting its work. At my kitchen table under the hard light, I stared at the envelope. My name was written on the front in her elegant, flowing script. "For Robert when I am gone, but only if you find this. If you don't, it wasn't meant to be." The wax cracked with a sound like a breaking bone. The letter began, "My dearest Robert, if you are reading this, then the Wanderlust is gone and you are alone. And I have a confession to make." Her confession was not of an affair, but of a deliberate, calculated deception. The letter was dated 3 months before she died. "I have known for a week that my time is short," she wrote. "The doctors have been kind, but their eyes tell the truth. And with that truth comes a clarity I wish I'd had years ago. Our family is not what it seems. Our trust was misplaced." She wrote that in our final year, she had grown deeply uneasy about Michael's relationship with Chloe. not their marriage but their financial symbiosis. She described overhearing a phone call Michael thought was private, where Chloe pressured him to ask us for a loan that was, in her words, just an early inheritance. Eleanor, ever the observer, began to notice patterns. Chloe asking pointed questions about our life insurance, our property titles. Michael, her sweet boy, becoming evasive, defensive. "I love our son," Eleanor wrote, "but love does not make one blind. I believe he is in over his head and she is at the helm. I fear that when I am gone, the pressure on you will be immense. And I fear that when you are gone, everything we built will be liquidated to feed a bottomless need. I cannot change the past, but I can alter the future." 2 weeks after that diagnosis, she explained, she went to a new attorney alone. She created a codicil, a formal amendment to our existing will. The original will, the one naming Michael as sole beneficiary after me, was locked in our home safe. This new document created a testamentary trust. Upon my death, the estate would not go to Michael directly. Instead, it would be held in a trust, administered by an independent executor. Michael would receive a monthly stipend for living expenses, and the trust would pay for major life events, a medical crisis, a child's education. But the capital, the house, the investments would remain protected. He could not sell the house. He could not take a loan against it. The principal would eventually pass to our nephew David, or to a maritime museum charity if David had no heirs. She disinherited him, I whispered to the empty kitchen. Not completely, but she had shackled his inheritance with legal chains. She believed it was the only way to protect him from himself and to protect our legacy from being consumed. "The codicil is legally binding," she wrote, "but it is also a grenade. If Michael and Chloe learn of it while you are alive, they will turn on you. They will see it as a betrayal, and they will make your life a living hell. They may even try to contest it, to claim I was not of sound mind. So I have hidden it." She concluded with instructions. The original signed codicil was placed in a safe deposit box at First Mercantile Bank downtown. The key was in this envelope. The copy of the codicil and a formal letter to me affirming her sound mind and intent was given to her attorney, a woman named Simone Yates, with strict instructions. They were only to be released upon my death or upon my presentation of the safe deposit box key. "I have placed our true last wishes in your hands, my love," she wrote. "But also on your shoulders. You must decide. You can destroy this letter and this key and let the old will stand, or you can unlock the box and arm yourself with the truth. Choose wisely. Always, Eleanor." My hands were shaking. The weight of it was colossal. For 4 years, I had been operating on a fundamental misunderstanding. I thought I was protecting our memory from an intrusive daughter-in-law. But Eleanor had already fought the war and she had drafted the treaty without telling me. The boat wasn't just a memory. It was a time capsule, a dead drop, and it had been nearly destroyed. The next morning, I called Simone Yates' office. Her assistant confirmed she was still in practice. I gave my name, said I was Eleanor's husband, and that I believed my wife had left documents with her. There was a long pause. "Please hold, Mr. Alder." When Simone came on the line, her voice was cautious, professional. "Robert, I was wondering if I would ever hear from you. Do you have the key?" "I have it." "Then you have a decision to make. My instructions from Eleanor are explicit. I can only discuss the contents of her file with you if you present the key in person or if I receive a copy of your death certificate. Which would you prefer to schedule?" We met that afternoon in her quiet, wood-paneled office. I placed the small silver key on her desk blotter. She examined it, nodded, and unlocked a filing cabinet, retrieving a slim, sealed envelope identical to the one from the boat. She was a remarkable woman, Simone said, very clear about what she feared. She opened the envelope and slid 2 documents across to me. One was the copy of the codicil, stamped and notarized. The other was a 2-page affidavit from Eleanor, detailing her mental competence, her reasons for the change, and her specific observations about Chloe's behavior. It included dates, conversations. It was cold, clinical, and devastating. "It's airtight," Simone said. 2 witnesses unrelated to the family, a video recording of the signing session to demonstrate her capacity, my own assessment as counsel. If challenged, it would hold up, but, she leaned forward. That is a very big if. Well, contests are ugly, expensive, and they tear families apart. She knew that. She placed the trigger in your hands because she trusted you to know when to pull it. I asked the question that had been burning in my chest. Did she not trust me enough to tell me while she was alive? Simone's expression softened. She told me you were the love of her life. She said telling you would have put you in an impossible position, forcing you to keep a secret from your son while she was dying. She chose to bear that burden alone. She thought the boat would be safe. She never imagined someone would destroy it. I left her office with the documents in a leather satchel, feeling like I was carrying a live bomb. The decision was now mine. Destroy the codicil and Michael would eventually inherit everything, likely to be managed and spent by Chloe. Use the codicil and I would be declaring war on my own son. There was a third option, of course. Do nothing. Let the codicil sit in the bank box until I died, letting the mechanism she built play out automatically. But that felt like cowardice. And after the theft of the boat, after the ultimatum, I wasn't sure I could live with that passivity. I drove to First Mercantile Bank. In the quiet, sterile room for safe deposit boxes, I slid key 714 into the lock. The long, narrow metal box pulled out with a smooth, heavy sigh. Inside was one item, a single, legal-sized envelope from Simone Yates' firm. I opened it. There was the original codicil, signed in a leaner's now shaky but recognizable hand. And beneath it, one more item, a handwritten note on a slip of bank note paper. Robert, if you are reading this, you found my first letter. Remember, the truth is a tool. Use it to build or to break. I trust you. E. I had the weapon. Now I had to decide whether to brandish it. I spent that night in a state of paralyzing calculation. I thought of Michael as a boy, helping me sand the deck of the Wanderlust asterisk. I thought of the silent, ashamed man he had become at my kitchen table. Was he a victim or a conspirator? Was I protecting him or punishing him? I decided on a test, a parley. I would not reveal the codicil, but I would confront them with the destruction of the boat and gauge their reaction. I invited Michael and Chloe to dinner, stating clearly it was to discuss what had happened. They arrived tense. Chloe spoke first. Robert, about the boat. Mark was just doing a job. The city citation was real. We were trying to protect you from a fine. I slid a photocopy of the towing release form across the table. You forged my signature, Chloe, or Mark did. That's a felony. Her face tightened. That's a strong accusation. You were upset. Maybe you don't remember signing. I remember every second, I said, my voice quiet. I signed under duress with a threat of police action. That invalidates it. But that's not why I asked you here. I want to know why. Why was it so important to erase that boat? Michael finally spoke, his eyes on his hands. It was an eyesore, Dad. It was depressing, we thought. We thought it would help you move on. Move on to what? I asked. To selling my house, to moving in with you. Chloe cut in. That was a separate conversation about family, about planning for the future. The future where my assets become your assets, I said. The room went very still. Chloe's mask of concern slipped just for a second, revealing something hard and calculating underneath. We are your family. Your assets asterisk are our future. That's how it works, or it should. And there it was. The entitlement laid bare. It wasn't about my well-being. It was about succession planning for a throne they assumed was theirs. Michael wouldn't look at me. In his silence, I had my answer. He was compliant. He had chosen his side. I will not be selling my house, I said, standing. You will not be moving in, and you will repay me the fair market value of the Wanderlust asterisk, which was not junk but a classic vessel. I will have an appraisal done. You have 30 days. Chloe stood, her chair scraping loudly. Or what? Or I file a police report for theft and forgery, and I sue you for conversion of property. She laughed, a short, harsh sound. You do that to your own son, to the father of your future grandchild. I looked at Michael. Would you do what you did to your own father? He flinched as if struck. They left. The test was over. I had failed, or they had. The bridge was smoldering, and I knew then that doing nothing was no longer an option. Alina's fears were not paranoid, they were prophetic. I had to secure the fortress she had tried to build. The next morning, I visited my own attorney, a pragmatic man named Ben Cruz who had handled my own will years ago. I showed him the codicil. He whistled low. This changes everything, Robert, but you need to understand the process. For this to take effect, it must be submitted to the probate court, now asterisk, to be filed alongside your existing will. It becomes part of the public record. There is no hiding it once it's filed. Michael and Chloe will be notified. Can they contest it immediately? I asked. Not until you die, Ben said, but they can start building a case. They'll likely allege undue influence, that you coerced Alina in her final days. Even with her affidavit, it's a fight. And, he hesitated, there's another issue. The original will, the one in your home safe, where is it? A cold dread washed over me. I went home and went straight to the den. The wall safe behind the painting of the Wanderlust was a simple, older model. I spun the dial to the combination, our anniversary. The door swung open. The safe was empty. The will, along with our marriage certificates, the deeds to the house and boat, were gone. Only a stack of obsolete bonds remained. Someone had opened the safe. Someone had taken the original will. And I knew with a sickening certainty that if the original will disappeared and only this new, restrictive codicil existed, a court might view the entire estate plan as invalid. We could be thrust into the chaos of intestacy, where state law decides who gets what. And in that scenario, being my only child, Michael would likely get everything anyway. The theft was a masterstroke. It meant someone in my family already knew about the codicil, and they were playing to win. The empty safe wasn't just a theft, it was a declaration of war. My first call wasn't to the police, it was back to Ben Cruz. They've taken the original will from my safe, I told him, my voice tight. There was a long silence on the line. Robert, he said slowly, that changes the tactical landscape entirely. Without the original will, the codicil is an amendment to a document that doesn't exist. It's like having directions to a house that's been demolished. He explained the legal nightmare. If I died right now, with the codicil filed but the original will missing, my estate would be in limbo. Simone Yates would present the codicil. Michael and Chloe would claim there was no valid will to amend, that the codicil was a fraudulent document created under duress. The court would have to decide. It could mean years of litigation, the estate frozen, assets drained by legal fees. They've put you in check, Ben said. Their move is to force a settlement on their terms, or bleed you dry fighting. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. I had discovered the theft while I was still alive. The game wasn't over. What's my move? I asked. Two things. First, we establish a paper trail that the will existed and was stolen. You report the burglary to the police. Today. Second, we make the codicil unassailable. We need to create a new, updated will right now, one that explicitly references and incorporates Alina's codicil and that supersedes any prior versions. We make you the living proof of her intent. I made the police report that afternoon. 2 officers came to the house. I showed them the safe, gave them the combination. One of them, a veteran with tired eyes, pointed out the obvious. No sign of forced entry on the safe. Combination lock. Either they guessed it or you gave it to someone. I hadn't given it to anyone. But the combination was our anniversary, 0719. The same numbers were on a decorative plate in the kitchen, a gift from Alina for our 25th. Anyone who spent time in our home could have deduced it. I gave the officers the names of everyone who had been in the house recently: Michael, Chloe, a cleaning service, a plumber. The officer taking notes paused at Michael's name. Your son. It wasn't a question. We'll make a report, but without evidence, without witnesses, this is going to be a very low priority. It's a civil matter, sir, a family dispute. I understood. The law moves slowly for property crimes, especially when family is involved. The report was just a piece of paper, but it was a start. The next day, I sat with Ben Cruz and executed a new last will and testament. It was a direct, forceful document. It named my nephew David as the executor and primary beneficiary of the trust, outlined the same restrictive terms as a leaner's codicil, and included a specific clause. This will revoke all prior wills and codicils, including the document dated April 12, 2019, which is incorporated herein by reference only to demonstrate the consistent intent of myself and my late wife, Alina Alder. It was a legal fortress, built on the foundation Alina had laid. I signed it with two impartial witnesses from Ben's office. The original went into his firm's vault. A copy went into a new, much more secure safe I had installed the same day. Now I had to go on the offensive. I couldn't prove who took the will, but I could remove their leverage. I sent a formal, certified letter to Michael and Chloe, drafted by Ben. It stated that I was aware of the removal of certain documents from my home safe, that a police report had been filed, and that any attempt to use those documents in any legal proceeding would be met with a prosecution for theft and fraud. It concluded by formally withdrawing my previous demand for repayment for the boat, and instead informing them I was filing a civil lawsuit for its deliberate destruction and the emotional distress it caused. The reaction was not what I expected. It wasn't rage, it was silence, a deep, unsettling quiet for 5 days. Then on a rainy Thursday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Michael, alone. He looked hollowed out, pale. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice ragged. I let him in. He stood in the foyer, not moving to sit. "Dad," he said, "the police came to our house. They asked about the safe. I filed a report. Things were taken." "I know what was taken," he said, and then the story spilled out of him in a choked rush. He claimed Chloe had found the combination months ago, noticed the numbers on the plate. After our disastrous dinner, after I threatened legal action over the boat, she had panicked. She was convinced I was going to cut them out of the will entirely. She had sent Mark, her husband, to the house one afternoon when she knew I was at my weekly doctor's appointment. Mark had opened the safe, taken the will, and brought it to her. Michael said he didn't know until after it was done. He said he was furious that they'd fought for days, but he had done nothing. He had kept the secret. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my heart a cold stone in my chest. "Because she's not stopping," he said, his eyes wide with a genuine fear I hadn't seen since he was a child. "The letter from your lawyer sent her over the edge. She's talking to her own attorney now. She's saying she has proof that Mom wasn't in her right mind when she signed that codicil, that you isolated her, that you influenced her." This was the wait it gets worse moment. They weren't just hiding the old will, they were preparing to attack the new one at its source, Alina's competence. "What proof?" I managed to ask. He shook his head. "I don't know specifics, but she's been digging, talking to Mom's old friends from the college, looking for anyone who might say she was confused or depressed near the end. She's saying the boat was a fantasy, a delusion you both shared, and that the hidden letter proves how irrational Mom was." The betrayal was so profound it felt like a physical vacuum in the room. My son was standing before me, confessing to being an accessory to theft, and warning me that his wife was preparing to publicly defile his mother's memory in a court of law to get their hands on my money. The sheer, brutal calculus of it took my breath away. "What do you want, Michael?" I finally asked. He started to cry silent, shoulder-shaking tears. "I want out. I can't. I can't live inside this anymore. It's a sickness. But she's pregnant, Dad. She's 14 weeks pregnant. I'm trapped." The final piece clicked into place. The grandchild, the ultimate emotional weapon. It was no longer a hope, it was a fact, and it was being wielded like a shield for her actions and a bludgeon against my resolve. I didn't hug him, I didn't offer comfort. The time for that was gone, burned away in the crucible of their choices. "You have a decision to make," I said, my voice sounding distant even to me. You can be a father who provides for his child through honest work, or you can be a pawn in a scheme to loot his own parents' legacy. You cannot be both. If you have evidence of her plans, of this so-called proof, you bring it to me. Otherwise, you are part of the attack. And I will defend myself and your mother's name against all of it." He left. I watched his car disappear down the street, and I knew the bridge between us was gone. It had been mined and blown up from both sides. There was no path back. I called Simone Yates. I told her everything: the stolen will, Michael's confession, Chloe's plan to allege incapacity. Simone was quiet for a long moment. "This is the fight Alina feared," she said, "but she prepared for it. The video recording of the signing session is exceptionally clear. Her affidavit is detailed. We have the testimony of the witnesses, both upstanding citizens with no connection to the family. But Robert, once this moves from a threat to a filed court challenge, it becomes public. The allegations about Alina will be in court documents. The newspapers might pick it up. There is a cost beyond money." I understood. They were willing to trash Alina's reputation to get what they wanted. The only way to stop them was to strike first, and to strike so decisively they would have no room to maneuver. With Ben and Simone coordinating, we developed a strategy. We would file the new will and Alina's codicil with the probate court immediately, not wait for my death. This was a highly unusual move called a living probate, or declaratory judgment action. We would ask the court to validate the documents now, to declare them my true last will, and to find that Alina was of sound mind. It was a preemptive lawsuit against my own son and his wife before they could sue me. It was the legal equivalent of launching all your missiles before the enemy's silos open. The paperwork was massive. The filing would include Alina's letter from the boat, her affidavit, the video, my police report, the certified letter I'd sent, and a sworn statement from me detailing the pressure campaign, the destruction of the boat, and the theft of the will. We were putting the entire ugly family feud on the judge's desk. The day before we were to file, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a single unlabeled DVD in a paper sleeve. I put it in my computer. The video showed my living room from the angle of the bookshelf. It was timestamped from about 2 months before Alina died. She was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking thin and frail. I was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Our voices were faint but clear. I was saying, "And the trust will protect him from himself, Ellie. It's the only way." She nodded, her eyes closed, and murmured, "You know best, Robert, just handle it. I'm so tired." The video cut off. My blood turned to ice. It was a snippet, devoid of the hours of conversation that surrounded it, stripped of all context. Out of 100 tender, collaborative discussions, this was the one fragment that could be twisted to show me dictating terms to a weary, sick woman. Chloe's proof. She must have hidden a camera in my home. The violation was absolute, a nausea-inducing invasion of our most private, painful moments. I called Ben, playing the clip for him over the phone. He cursed under his breath. "It's ambiguous, but it's damaging. It plays right into the undue influence narrative. This is what they'll use." "Can we still file?" I asked, the weight of it all pressing down. "We file faster," Ben said, his voice grim. "We file first thing tomorrow morning. We frame this clip as part of the theft and harassment campaign. We get ahead of it, but Robert, you need to be ready. Once we do this, there's no pretending anymore. This is the battle, and it's for everything." We filed the declaratory judgment action at 9 a.m. the next morning. The probate court clerk stamped the thick packet of papers with a sound that felt final. The legal war was now official and public. Ben served the papers to Michael and Chloe, and to their attorney, a slick-looking man named David Finch, whose office was known for aggressive estate litigation. The clock started ticking. Their response was due in 30 days. The silence from their camp was brief. 15 days later, Finch filed a countersuit. It was exactly as we feared. He alleged undue influence, claiming I had coerced a mentally diminished Alina into signing the codicil. He cited the stolen video clip as evidence. He also made a bold, dangerous move. He petitioned the court to have me declared financially exploitative and to appoint a temporary guardian to manage my assets, effectively asking a judge to take control of my life because I was, in their words, acting irrationally and against the best interests of my heir. It was a nuclear option. If they succeeded, I would lose all control. The house, my investments, everything would be managed by a court-appointed stranger, likely someone who would see giving money to my needy son and pregnant daughter-in-law as a reasonable expense. It was the ultimate inversion, painting me as the villain and themselves as the victims needing protection from me. The hearing for the temporary guardianship was set for 3 weeks later. It was a preliminary skirmish, but it would set the tone for the entire case. Ben and Simone prepared meticulously. We had to demonstrate not just Alina's capacity, but my own. We gathered affidavits from my doctor, my financial advisor, longtime friends. We turned my life into a dossier of competence. The night before the hearing, Michael called. I almost didn't answer. His voice was a whisper. "She's going to testify tomorrow," he said. "Chloe, Finch is putting her on the stand to talk about Mom's state of mind in those last months, about how you controlled everything." "Are you testifying?" I asked. A long pause. "Finch says I don't have to, that it would look bad for the son to testify against the father, but Dad, the video, I didn't know about it, I swear. She hid that camera months ago. I found it when I was packing her office. I took it, I have it, the whole memory card." My breath caught. "What's on it?" "Everything, hours of footage. The clip they have is the only one that looks bad out of context. The rest, it's you and Mom talking, laughing, making decisions together. It shows her clear as day, asking questions, disagreeing with you sometimes. It shows the day she told you about going to Simone Yates alone. You looked shocked." He was describing the exculpatory evidence, the truth. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't bring it to you," he said, his voice cracking. "If I do, she'll know, I don't know what she'll do, but I mailed the memory card to you, anonymous. You should get it tomorrow, use it, please, just don't tell her it came from me." The call ended. I sat in the dark, wrestling with a storm of emotions. Was this a trick, a final manipulation, or was it the first fragile sign of my son breaking free? I had no way of knowing. The hearing was in a small, wood-paneled courtroom. Judge Erwin Moss presided, an older man with a reputation for being no-nonsense. Chloe and Michael sat at the plaintiff's table with Finch. Michael wouldn't look at me. Chloe looked poised, dressed in a conservative suit, the picture of concerned family. Finch presented his case. He argued that my actions, changing my will, filing a lawsuit against my own son, were irrational and indicative of a mind being clouded by grief and paranoia. He played the 60-second video clip. In the quiet courtroom, it sounded damning. "You know best, Robert. Just handle it. I'm so tired." Alina's frail voice echoed off the walls. Then it was Ben's turn. He stood and calmly dismantled Finch's entire argument. He presented the medical affidavits of Alina's sound mind. He played the full 20-minute video of her signing the codicil at Simone's office, where she articulately explained her reasons to the camera. He submitted the reports from the 2 impartial witnesses. Then he addressed the stolen clip. "This snippet, Your Honor, is not evidence of undue influence. It is evidence of a theft. A theft of documents from a safe, and a theft of privacy through a hidden camera. It is part of a pattern of harassment designed to pressure my client into surrendering his assets." Judge Moss listened, his expression unreadable. He asked Finch a few pointed questions about the source of the video clip. Finch waffled, saying it was provided by his clients from their personal archives. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. Then Ben played his final card. With the judge's permission, he submitted a new piece of evidence, the full, unedited memory card from the hidden camera which had arrived at my house by courier that very morning. He queued up a specific segment. On the screen, Alina and I were discussing the trust. She was saying, "I don't want him to have it all at once, Robert. He's not ready, Chloe. She sees dollar signs, not a home." I responded, "Then we protect it. We protect him from that." She nodded firmly. "We do, I've already started." The contrast was staggering. The full context transformed the meaning entirely. Judge Moss didn't need to see more. He stopped the playback. He denied the petition for a temporary guardianship in its entirety. He said from the bench, "What I see here is a thoughtful estate plan created by a competent woman and a surviving spouse carrying out her wishes. I see no evidence of incapacity or exploitation by Mr. Alder. What I do see is a deeply troubling pattern of conduct by the petitioners in their efforts to obtain these assets." He then, on his own initiative, ordered the hidden camera video footage to be sealed and made inadmissible in any further proceedings, calling its creation a reprehensible invasion of privacy. It was a rout. Finch looked stunned. Chloe's composed mask shattered into sheer, unvarnished fury. Michael sat with his head in his hands. The judge scheduled the main trial on the validity of the will and codicil for 6 months out, but his ruling made the outcome seem inevitable. In the hallway after, Chloe strode up to me, ignoring Ben. "You've destroyed your family," she hissed. "You'll never see your grandchild." I looked at her, and for the first time I felt no anger, only a profound pity. "You destroyed it the moment you saw my wife's life as an obstacle to your comfort," I said quietly. "The child is innocent. I will set up a trust for their education, one you cannot touch. That is the last offer you will get from me." She turned and walked away. Michael lingered, a broken man, in the middle of the empty hallway. He started to speak, but I held up a hand. "You have a child coming. Be better than this." I walked away. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. The main trial never happened. 2 weeks later, through their attorney, Chloe and Michael dropped all claims. They accepted the terms of the trust as outlined in the new will. The condition was no contact. They wanted a clean break. Ben advised me to agree. It was over. The aftermath was a quiet, hollow victory. I had protected Eleanor's wishes. I had secured the house, the legacy. But the cost sat in my chest like a stone. My son was gone. A grandchild would grow up knowing me as a monster. I threw myself into the one thing that still felt meaningful. Using a portion of the savings Eleanor had wanted protected, I established a small charitable foundation in her name, funding art history scholarships at the community college where she taught. It was a living thing I could point to, a positive outcome from the wreckage. Then 8 months after the court hearing, a registered letter arrived. It was from the county probate court. A separate, unrelated case had been settled, and my name was listed as a potentially interested party. Puzzled, I opened it. It was the final disposition of the estate of a man named Arthur Finch, David Finch's father. The lawyer had died suddenly. In going through his files, his own executors had discovered something. Arthur Finch had been the original notary on mine and Eleanor's very first will, the one we'd made when we were 35. And he had kept a copy in his files, as some old-school notaries did. Attached was a photocopy of that first, long-forgotten will. Eleanor and I had signed it in a moment of youthful optimism, and in the messy, handwritten margin next to the clause about inheritance, we had written and initialed a single sentence. "If any heir contests this will or any subsequent amendment in bad faith, they shall be deemed to have predeceased us, and their share shall lapse." A no-contest clause. We had put it in ourselves, a naive protection against future drama, and then forgotten about it entirely over the decades, through multiple updated wills. But according to the letter from the estate's attorney, because this was the original governing document, and because our later wills had never explicitly revoked this clause, it might still be enforceable. Michael and Chloe had contested in bad faith, without question. The clause, if valid, meant Michael had legally predeceased me. His share of the trust, the monthly stipend, the access to funds for his child would lapse. Everything would go to our nephew David outright. It was the final, cruel irony. In their greed, they had triggered a trap their own lawyer's father had helped us set 30 years prior. A forgotten sentence in a margin had undone them completely. I sat with this knowledge for a week. I consulted Ben. He said the clause was aggressive but likely enforceable given the clear bad faith of their lawsuit. I had the power to enforce it, to cut them off completely. I thought about the grandchild. I thought about the boy Michael used to be. I thought about Alina and what she truly wanted. She hadn't wanted to punish him. She had wanted to protect him. Cutting him off entirely would be an act of punishment, not protection. I made my decision. I instructed Ben not to enforce the no contest clause. The trust would stand as originally designed after Alina's codicil. Michael's share would remain, governed by its restrictive rules. It was the last piece of my wife's plan, and I would see it through as she intended, not as a weapon, but as a bulwark. Last month I was walking through town and saw Michael in the park. He was sitting on a bench, pushing a stroller back and forth. He saw me. We looked at each other across 50 yards of green grass and unspoken history. He gave a small, slow nod. I nodded back. Then I turned and walked home. The house is quiet, the driveway is empty, but the oak tree Alina and I planted the year before she got sick is now over 20 feet tall. Its roots are deep, its branches are strong. I sit in her rocking chair with my coffee and I understand now what she meant about foundations. You don't just build them for the weight they hold today. You build them for the storms you cannot yet see. The boat is gone. The battle is over. But the structure, the one we built together with love and later with fierce, painful resolve, still stands. And it will stand for whatever comes next. So what do you hold on to and what do you let be towed away? That's the question Alina's letter really asked me. It wasn't about a boat or a house or even a will. It was about the core of a person. What is your non-negotiable truth? For her, it was protecting the love we built from being consumed by a hunger she saw coming. For me, it became upholding that protection, even when the cost was a relationship with my only child. We like to think of inheritance as a gift, a smooth passing of the torch, but often it's the final audit of a family's ledger. All the unspoken debts, the hidden resentments, the quiet sacrifices come due in the cold light of probate court. A hidden will isn't just a document, it's a verdict on the living, written by the dead. It says, I know what you might become, and I am building a wall against it. My story is not unique. It happens in quiet suburbs and bustling cities every day. A parent hides a will, or a child destroys one. According to estate attorneys, the intentional hiding or destruction of a will is both a civil wrong and a criminal act in most states, but it happens because people believe the stakes justify the sin. They see a piece of paper as an obstacle to what they feel they deserve. What they fail to see is that the paper isn't the obstacle. The love and trust that were lost long before the signing is the real barrier. The law can decide who gets the property. It can enforce a trust, interpret a clause, sanction bad faith. But it cannot rebuild a connection that was sacrificed on the altar of entitlement. It cannot give a grandfather back the years he will miss with a grandchild. The victory in court feels like equilibrium, as I said earlier, a load-bearing wall holding. But a house can be structurally sound and feel utterly empty. Alina's greatest insight, the one she paid for with her silence, was that you cannot control another person's choices. You can only build boundaries around what is yours. You can say, this is my line. You cannot cross it. That line is not cruelty. It is the definition of the self. When someone demands you erase that line for their convenience, they are not asking for love. They are asking for your dissolution. I look at the oak tree now and I see more than memory. I see a choice we made to plant something that would outlive us, knowing we might not see it reach maturity. That is faith. The boat was a memory. The tree is a legacy. One was taken from me. The other continues to grow, independent of the storm that raged around it. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Have the difficult conversations before it's too late. Document your wishes clearly. But more importantly, understand that the things you leave behind are not just assets. They are messages. Make sure your message is not one of fear, but of clarity. Make sure it builds a foundation strong enough to withstand the pressure of human need. And know that sometimes protecting a legacy means letting go of a dream of how you thought your family would be. The wanderlust is gone, but I finally understand its name. The wish to wander, to seek, to escape, it never really leaves you. My wandering now is different. It's through memories, through the quiet of a house that still holds her voice in its walls, through the hope that somewhere in the future, a child with her nose might understand the story behind the trust that bears her name. Thank you for listening.